So engage with us right now as we get started here in just a few minutes on First Coast Connect.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Federal environment regulators released initial data yesterday from a study on forever chemicals in drinking water. PFAS was detected at levels above minimum reporting limits in more than 430 water systems across the country. David Andrews is a scientist at the nonprofit organization Environmental Working Group.
The results that they've released to date indicate that the contamination is widespread as expected, and I think they really highlight the need for immediate action.
He says in Tampa, PFAS contamination seems to be coming from MacDill Air Force Base. The Environmental Protection Agency will continue to release quarterly results over the next couple of years. This weekend at Amelia Island, it's the annual conference of the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. Margie Menzel has more.
Hundreds of businesses are there, of course, along with elected officials and nonprofits. With Tallahassee coming up on its bicentennial year, they have a lot of questions about the city's future. Terry Ard, chair of the Chamber's Board of Directors, wrote an op-ed in the Tallahassee Democrat asking, "How do we sleep at night knowing only 50% of Leon County children are ready for kindergarten?" The conference runs through Sunday and includes breakout sessions on research, real estate, healthcare, and tech. I'm Margie Menzel.
And after beating the Dallas Cowboys last weekend, the Jacksonville Jaguars will continue their preseason schedule tomorrow as they take on the Detroit Lions. This weekend's game is set to kick off at 1 p.m. on Saturday and will be broadcast on NFL Network. Here in Jacksonville, widely scattered thunderstorms, especially after 3 p.m. Highs today in the mid-90s. It's 9:03 now. Time for First Coast Connect.
And a very good Friday morning to you. It's Dan Scanlon. You're listening to First Coast Connect, and we've got a full show today, so let's get to it. We are kicking Friday off with our usual weekly Media Roundtable. Some of the items on the menu for our Friday Media Roundtable are, as you may or may not have heard, Aldi, the small supermarket guys, who are not as small as you think, acquiring Jacksonville-based grocers Winn-Dixie and Harvey's. The city is hiring a law firm to help with stadium negotiations. And the public is invited to provide input into what qualities they want to see in Duval County School System's next superintendent. Then later, the buzz on a local honeybee festival. But first this hour, here to round up this week's news are Nate Monroe of the Florida Times-Union.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. Tim Gibbons of the Jacksonville Business Journal.
Good to be here.
Writer and Jacksonville Today columnist Nikisha Williams.
Hey, good morning.
And my new compatriot in the newsroom, Casmira Harrison of Jacksonville Today. Listen live on the radio or watch our video stream right now on Facebook and WJCT's YouTube page. You can call us at 549-2937. Tweet us at FCC On Air. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or message us on the First Coast Connect Facebook page. So let's look at that top story. In an announcement on Wednesday morning, Aldi, who runs the smaller supermarkets that are scattered around the region, said it would acquire Winn-Dixie and Harvey Supermarket from the Jacksonville-based Southeastern Grocers in a move to expand its presence in the Southeast. And this is yet another page in the Winn-Dixie saga over the past few decades that has seen it go from locally owned to being bigger and then smaller and then subdividing and Harvey's, et cetera, et cetera. So what does this mean for those working for Southeastern Grocers and those stores, those 60 plus that are in our region, both at headquarters and in the stores, as well as consumers and our local economy? So Tim, let's start with you. You're the business writer who I've known for all these years. What does it mean?
So the big question is going to be which stores they actually rebrand as Aldi's. So Aldi's, as you referenced, is a smaller footprint. So they'd have to basically cut the Winn-Dixies or the Harveys down, which could be good for those who own shopping centers. Now they have more space they can lease out. And the Aldi brand is hot. I mean, they're one of for the past 3 years, they've been one of the fastest growing supermarkets in the country. So this kind of 400 store expansion is a major step for the brand. So locally, the big question is which ones actually get changed to Aldi's and which ones stay as Winn-Dixie's and Harvey's.
So my big question is, Aldi is a small footprint, as you say. Winn-Dixie and the old Winn-Dixies that turned into Harvey's are large stores. How do you fit the Aldi format if you choose to put an Aldi where there's an existing Winn-Dixie, if you want to move that Aldi into a better marketplace? Because there's about a dozen or so, I believe, Aldis in this general region. How do you get them to fit a larger footprint, or do you subdivide that store?
That's kind of the question. So the subdivision is one option. As Aldi is growing, one of the things that analysts told me yesterday is that they're possibly looking at trying basically a new model. So if you've been to an Aldi's, they don't have the full range of products that a Winn-Dixie would have, or a Publix or something. So by having the more space, they can actually go into a different sort of business model. Maybe you have big Aldi's and small Aldi's. You see it with Publix. If you look at it in is it Neptune Beach that has two Publix literally across the street from each other. One is what used to be their old Greenwise brand, which is a much smaller footprint. The other is what you think of as a full Publix. Different shoppers want different things. So possibly you can see Aldi and supersize Aldi.
Well, let me throw this out to the panel here. Those of you who have lived in Florida for a long time, lived in this area, what does this mean to you? Is there nostalgia lost? Is this a revelation, or is this the final chapter of the Winn-Dixies that we used to know?
I don't think it is a final chapter. I think it's just what it says it is an expansion. I don't see them turning that fancy Winn-Dixie at like Bay Meadows and 295 into a subdivided Aldi's. What I do think is that it gives Southeastern grocers whatever it is that they need for their pockets, profit margins, whatever. But what I'm really concerned is, instead of thinking about subdividing existing stores, because part of the press release said that they would keep some Winn-Dixies, keep some Harveys, Jacksonville specifically, where Southeastern grocers is based and has had a lot of footprint in North Side, East Side, West Side areas where there are food deserts. That is an opportunity for Aldi, with its small footprint, with its smaller store, to go into these neighborhoods and into these communities that are known as food deserts and look at these smaller buildings, these smaller, businesses that are abandoned or no longer there or need to be, rehabilitated, and put in a store in an area where the community has need for fresh food and fresh groceries and fresh vegetables and fresh fruit. And so I think that's an opportunity to do what hasn't been done in years, and to solve a problem while also solving for profit.
We put an interactive map put together by Jessica Palumbo, our news director, on my story about this. And the big thing I noticed was that chunk, that 32209, that northwest area, there's nothing up there. There's no supermarkets. If there was a chain supermarket up there, and I have a vague memory that one opened, it's not there. So
there was a Harvey's years ago around, but 32209 is a very large area, and the Harvey's is not centrally located for everyone. But if you take a smaller Aldi and put it in a couple of different places in that area, you would have access to fruit and vegetables and fresh food and not have to go to like a corner store where there's only processed junk food, stuff like that. And that would be a big solvency for an area that's considered a health zone 1.
And Aldi's does indicate in their news release and their subsequent answers to some of my questions that they do plan to expand. So here's your expansion. Mm-hmm. And I would think certain city leaders would jump on this. And let's get together. Let's put together something that helps residents who don't have any place but a convenience store. Any other thoughts about this? Nate, you've lived here, gosh, how long? Winn-Dixie, Aldi's, Harvey's, you've shopped at them all, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I like that you can get a beer at the Winn-Dixie by me when you shop, but I don't really have any thoughts other than that, unfortunately.
The sip and shop revolution actually has been a great thing in the supermarket space.
Yes. Just to pick up on what you guys were just talking about, the Harvey's in downtown is the only grocery store in downtown. Mm-hmm. And so if that were to go away, that would be problematic because there would be literally nothing else there. And that's a little overlooked store. When people talk about downtown, we talk about there not being a grocery store, but there actually is. And so that's, something Tim had mentioned before we went on air, that like commercial real estate is going to be an interesting thing to watch with this buyout and this, if there's going to be consolidation.
So Aldi has a better credit rating than Southeastern Grocers did, which from a landlord standpoint means that they're considered a better tenant. So if Aldi does want to expand, if they do want to go into spaces, there's a good chance that landlords would be interested in having them come in because they're a great anchor tenant. They bring people in. It's good for the other tenants that would be in a shopping plaza.
I can though think of a Winn-Dixie that when it left during that migration, when Southeastern dumped 50 some odd stores, it never got filled again. And this is in a subdivision in the South Side where you'd think there would be a need for that store. So is that the specter we face, that we could have an empty hole in an area that Aldi's doesn't think needs or is going to make good on, and you get another hole?
Yeah, always a possibility. I mean, that's the grocery market is a very competitive one. Margins are small. Competition is really tight. It's consolidating. There's fewer grocery store operators now than there were 5 years ago. You have some big mergers taking place right now. So yeah, that's always the possibility where you have one of these particularly bigger stores, if they feel they don't need it, that it becomes just like the empty Kmart's that you see dotted around still.
I'll swear there's even an empty Pick and Save or two out there somewhere. If you've really been here that long, Casimir, you've been in the state of Florida working as a journalist for a long time. What are your thoughts about the Winn-Dixies and Harveys that you've grown up and shopped with, and this change? Do you see an impact statewide?
I'm not entirely sure. My experience with I'm a Save-A-Lot girl personally, but I'm interested to see if Aldi's, because it just has a smaller group of a smaller footprint, a smaller group of people working there, how that's going to affect the employees across the board.
It's interesting. I date back to the days when the Davis family owned Winn-Dixie, and when they divested themselves of it and Southeastern came in, Southeastern then got the buy low and then divested themselves, and then came, I think, 59 stores, dropped, and now we're also not even considering there's another small grocery chain that's part of Southeastern that's also being sold off as part of this. I can't think of the name.
Fresco y Mas.
Thank you very much. So literally, what happens to that big operation on the west side, that big headquarters that's always been the Winn-Dixie, Harvey's location, and all of the terminals, all of the trucks systems?
So the kind of the bigger impact question is that distribution network. Company tells me that they plan on continuing. Aldi plans on continuing to operate there. For headquarter employees, I'm sure they're concerned because a lot of times when you have an acquisition like this, you don't need. Aldi has its own accountants and its own lawyers and its own people, doing headquarters things. But that distribution network is probably one of the things that Aldi actually wanted because it gives it a way to expand. When you're expanding a grocery store chain, that means more stores. It also means more trucks and more warehouses and more stuff moving around.
And what about a community push to keep or expand? Who's got to get involved in that? Should the mayor do it? Should the Chamber of Commerce do it? Should county commissions jump in St. John's, in Nassau, to make sure that there's an expansion into areas that need it, that need these stores?
I mean, they can try. I mean, I think from a global level, working in an industry that is going through consolidation itself, this is usually like not a good thing. The further removed from the community that the ownership of a company gets, and the larger it gets, like usually that's not good. And so we can be hopeful that Aldi will expand and look at the map and look at areas that are underserved. But I mean, my instinct is to think that they're gonna, they have a good credit rating for a reason. And I think that that's like a reason to be concerned.
Hey, shoppers out there, listeners, join the conversation at 549-2937. Don't forget, you can get us at FCC On Air, First Coast Connect, WJCT.org on Facebook. We want to get some input from the person holding the shopping bag, or in the case of Aldi's, the ones who have to bring the shopping bag in with them. Someone else had a comment. Yes, Kat.
I was curious. I mean, how do you incentivize, because of what Keisha says? how do you even incentivize these businesses, these grocery stores, to go into areas that need it the most? Places like Aldi's would be beneficial to that area. Um,
And I think that's the thing. Like, the community has been asking for a grocery store in the areas where there isn't one for years, decades, probably longer than that. I've only been here 12 years, so I can't speak past like 2011. But I mean, it's always been a thing. You talk about there's no grocery store downtown aside from that one Harvey's, was it like over out on Union Street? But like, Jacksonville doesn't lack space. It doesn't lack real estate. What Jacksonville lacks has lacked is a willingness by administrations to push companies who are locally based or who do business in this community to serve the entire community and not just the part of it that's booming. So just as St. John's Town Center is all the way built up, and there's two Publixes across the street from each other at Neptune Beach, and then you've got Winn-Dixie and Publix across the street from each other at Bay Meadows and 295. Like, I can hit like 10 grocery stores in a 5-mile radius of my house. You go into other neighborhoods and that's not the case. And it's not, you talk about you want people to move downtown. You want people to move into these other areas. You want to do with gentrification on the east side, and you want to bring La Villa back to its heyday. You want to do all of this stuff in Moncrief, where it used to be Moncrief Springs, and these go-to places and these destinations that are like storied parts of Jacksonville. But you have to give the communities what they need. Part of that is groceries. Like, people need to eat, and everybody can't just drive everywhere to go to the good grocery store, to go to the fresh market, which costs significantly more than an Aldi or even the Winn-Dixie or the Harvey's or the Fresco y Mas. So it's about a willingness from the mayoral administration to try to incentivize that, and the willingness to hold the feet to the fire and say, hey, do this here. You want to expand. You've bought this store. It's Jacksonville based. This is Jacksonville. It's 587 some odd square miles of land and space. Here is where there are no grocery stores. Put one here, and then get the community involved. Like, I'm from Chicago, where they put a Whole Foods in Inglewood. I don't think it's there anymore for whatever reason. But the way they did that was getting the community involved and doing a community garden so that some of the vegetables would come out of the community and into the store and be cheaper. That's something that you can do right here in Jacksonville and get the community involved and have them be part of what's happening in their area and not feel like they're being pushed out for gentrification.
All right, let's go from food to football. Also this week, Mayor Donna Diggins' team selected Sidley Austin LLP, a Chicago-based law firm, to represent the city in its negotiations about the new stadium with the Jaguars. And those talks are slated to begin this month. So, Nate, you wrote about this, and then I got a follow-up question on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is fulfilling a campaign promise that the mayor made, that she was going to bring in a top-notch negotiator to kind of carry the city's water in these high stakes talks with the Jaguars. Sidley Austin is this, call them a silk stocking law firm, this like international firm. They've done deals like this before. So, we'll see. These negotiations, something that I think is easy to get lost in this discussion, because the Jaguars, did these town halls and they have these pictures and they have timelines and all these ideas. None of this has actually been negotiated, including like who is designing the renovations. Like, this is a thing that has not actually been decided. And so, I mean, the entire full scope of this deal is still up in the air, and there is still a considerable amount of work that needs to be done before we even know what this new renovated stadium is going to look like.
And the city council still has to put their player into the game, their negotiator, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, they've picked their negotiator, and the way this presumably will go down is that the mayor's office will negotiate, and then obviously it has to be passed by city council. So they need input. They should have oversight. But I think that Nate's bigger point is the idea that it's at the starting point, and if you look at the town halls, if you look at all of the really, really flashy graphics, which Jacksonville is really good at making renderings. If I could have gotten into the rendering industry back in the day, that would have been the option. But it's the starting point, even though some of the way it's rolled out makes it sound like we just have to get the city to sign off on a check. It should be more complicated than that.
Yeah, I love the story that I did see this week. I think it was the Times-Union. Why do renderings never look like real life? We don't really know what any of this is going to look like. We know it's going to be a domed stadium. Yes. There's going to be some stuff around it. Yes. Maybe Lot J disappears. Maybe.
There will be some stuff.
There might be a parking garage, maybe. Kaz, in your travels around City Hall, what have you been hearing?
About the stadium, Donna Deegan had a community conversation the other day, and there was a little bit of pushback from some community members. That's been kind of widespread. Half people for it, half people against it. Deegan seems to be very firm in her commitment to going forward with this, and she and the council president seem to have said repeatedly that they just want the best deal for the city of Jacksonville. I have no reason to doubt that.
I mean, the issue is that in some ways we act like they're negotiating overdoing it, and my, I don't know, this is probably more opinion than I typically express, but that's not what they're doing. They're negotiating over the details of the deal, but the choice is have the Jaguars leave or pay for their stadium. And that's I know there are many people in the community who say it's not the best use of tax money. Jacksonville has plenty of other needs that money could go to, and all of that's true, and also all of it doesn't matter. The city is not going to lose the Jaguars, which puts them in a negotiating position of, to a certain extent, the team can come and say, okay, it's our way or the highway, which the team has been prone to do, and the city does not have a lot of leverage when, at the end of the day, the team can pack up and move somewhere else.
Correct. We have had nationwide teams that have packed up and left, and I can tell you, as a 40-plus year resident of the city, it was a little dismal pre-Jaguars when you only had 2 bowl games and some high school classics that were in, admittedly, a far lesser stadium. But what if you have an NFL caliber, even if it's a little dated, stadium, and all you're doing is football classics for the high schools and colleges? That whole epicenter of downtown suddenly becomes like an empty Winn-Dixie.
I mean, there's 7 games a year there. I mean, it's not, from an economic impact standpoint, I'm not talking about the broader, having the team here is one of those intangible things that you can argue about what it does for the city, but the direct economic impact of game day isn't huge.
Well, let's go to the lines here. Linda from Mandarin, what's your thoughts here?
My thoughts is, one of the things I think that never has been put on the table is the stadium in which we're talking about that's been renovated 2 or 3 times was here before Mr. Khan got here. So I thought that the city owned the stadium, owned the land. He was a tenant. Is he part owner now? Because when you start from negotiations, you have to start from strength. We understand we don't want to lose him, but when you go in and say, oh, we can't lose him, well, but if we're the owners of the structure, how is the tenant telling us what needs to happen? We don't have architecture there, but he's already got renderings. So it's always been him getting out ahead because he's a savvy business person, putting out there to the public what needs to happen, and then coming to us to pay at least 50%. And I just don't understand the premise of those. We don't have leverage. If we own the structure, he's a tenant.
All right, let me let the gang here respond, because thank you, Linda, because obviously some eyes lit up on that one. Who wants to take that one, or all of you?
Well, I mean, I think those are fair sentiments, and again, I mean, this has gotten lost in the discussion, but I mean, the caller is right that the city does own the stadium, and if the Jaguars want to design the renderings, if they want to or design the actual renovations, that's a concession. That is a benefit to the Jaguars to let them do that. And another way of saying that's something that needs to be negotiated. I think to Tim's point, the city has a duty to negotiate in good faith with this guy and to get the best deal it can. And if the Jaguars walk away because the city is trying to negotiate in good faith, then they were going to walk away no matter what. So I think it's a little silly to frame people pushing back and asking for better terms as like a threat to the team. I mean, it's just absurd. Like, if Shad Khan's going to walk over that, then he was going to walk. So that's kind of my view of it.
Like, going halfsies with a billionaire is just not the way to go. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Going halfsies with a billionaire is not the move. It's not the move. He had his whole yacht on the St. Johns River for a time when the Jags were winning, just to flex. talking about it was a good luck charm. Like, we know you have the money. And so holding a city that needs so much infrastructurally, educationally, sustainability wise, and grocery stores, which we just talked about, to incentivize and build up our downtown around more than just the NFL team that has 7 games a year and 2 bowl games. Like, come on now. Come to the table and negotiate. Don't get out in the media and in the public and say, oh, I'm not going to talk about this, and get mad when people ask you a legitimate question. Like, go sit down somewhere. If the city owns the stadium and the tenant is dictating the terms, like, I understand tenants can dictate things. Like, there was a story earlier this week where the woman didn't have heat. So she's like, you can withhold rent and do things as a tenant. Like, this is not the same situation. Like, you're an NFL team. You make money. You are a franchise. And everything that you have asked for since you've been here and since Shad Khan bought the team from the Weavers has happened with the city just throwing money at you because our previous mayor was a fan. No judgment, just facts. So, like, you got the amphitheater, it brings concerts. You got the flex field, and the people can go and see the things. You put the pools in and the new Jumbotron video boards that you have to take seats out for, so that when Florida, Georgia comes, you got to put the seats back in and figure out where everybody's going to sit. And so now you want a whole new stadium with a dome? Put a dome on the one you have. Put a dome on the one you have. That rendering that we've had over the last 7, 8, 9, however many years of the 4 seasons that was going to be anchored by JEA, but then JEA decided to go somewhere else. Where's all that magical fancifulness? Like, we do the State of the Jaguars every year to get excited about the team and what they're going to do. The ramps from the Hart Bridge came down because they said, we got to have people coming through downtown, and you still drive right through it. You get off the ramps, you drive right through it, you get back on the ramp and go where you were going.
It's interesting. I hit a pothole on Tuesday so bad that I had to pull over and make sure I didn't break a wheel.
Exactly. So, like, the Jags are dictating things in the name of downtown revitalization and making people move downtown and do the things. It's not just the NFL franchise that's going to make people move downtown. It's not just the Mosh moving to the North Bank that are going to make people move downtown. You have to have other things here to do. There has to be an entire nightlife, entertainment district, grocery stores, again, I'm going to say it, and housing. And so there are so many other things that the city needs in addition to the entertainment that is provided by the Jags. But, like, holding the city's feet to the fire and saying, if you don't give us $500 million for us to build a new stadium, or we're going to walk. I'm sure there are other professional teams that we can court to get here. Controversial opinion, but it happens.
Well, we've got some Facebook comments here. Mr. Weatherby does indicate there's a great book called Field of Schemes that every Jacksonville resident, he said, should read. It lays out in detail how stadium renovations and situations like this are often abysmal for taxpayers. And Mr. McGuire says, we can renovate the stadium and relocate the jail at the same time, ? It seems like it will be very limiting to future city budgets. And obviously, here now we hear that there's thoughts of putting the jail next to the courthouse. I would think that's going to see some people relocated. There's businesses, there's homes there. I know there's some empty spaces, but at some point, that means some community cleansing.
I mean, the city has financial capacity, but, $1 billion is like, it's going to be something like $80 million a year in debt service. That's a lot of money. Building a new jail is probably a $500 million project. That's $40 million in debt service every year. And I'm assuming the mayor wants big capital budgets every year, and those tend to be 250 to 500 million themselves. So, I mean, at some point, yeah, I mean, and to Nikisha's point and everyone's point, I mean, this is a city with a lot of needs. And I mean, this is why we elect these people. They need to make these choices, and they need to figure out how to balance all this stuff. Where the stadium fits into that is controversial. But that's why we elect these people. And again, this is why they have a duty to go out and negotiate and get the best deal they can. And if they do it in good faith, then it's going to be fine.
Okay, let us move on to another story that basically we're wondering about is the jail. This week, the City Council Committee met on Wednesday to discuss the possibility of putting the jail somewhere else after 31 years at its current location, the John E. Good Correctional Center, the correct name for it. So, Kazmira, that seemed to come out of left field. I thought there was thoughts of moving Atlantic Road, making some sub-jails. Fill us in. You were part of that.
That didn't seem to come out of left field for me.
Okay.
There's apparently they've been talking about behind the scenes moving this jail for years. And then earlier this year, the Tributary had a series of stories about the safety conditions of the jail and the conditions for inmates, and that was partly the focus of this committee meeting this week. And they started on Wednesday, and they established what they're going to do going forward. The council president, Salem, has the hope to have an RFP by the end of all of this. But anyway, they're supposed to be starting like work group meetings and committee, like really heavy going into details about what they need to do, starting September 15th, 14th, something along those lines.
So I know the logic, I think, of putting the jail next to the courthouse, but what's the logic versus all the talk of put it on Lanny Road, put it next to the prison farm, put it here, do some smaller prisons here and there? There's obviously some solid court business reasons.
Well, all of these things seemed interconnected to me. You know, you've got the stadium negotiations, you got all this revitalization you want downtown, and then that jail is sitting on prime riverfront property. To be honest, I never noticed it was a jail. I'm new to Jacksonville. It just was a very big building.
There was even some
downtown.
discussion a week or two ago about somebody wanting to take the old jail, that building, and actually renovate it into condos or something. I was amazed at that.
The jail is a very good. The jail's a very good scapegoat for downtown's problems. We have lots of even more prime real estate than the jail that is not developed and is fallow and sunblasted and depressing. The jail, like, they're from an economic development perspective, sure, at some point, ideally, it moves, but that is not the cause of downtown's current morass at all. And moving the jail for that reason is a bad idea.
There's definite reasons that they have to do something with the jail from a health and safety standpoint. But yeah, to Nate's point, it's always baffled me that people talk about, the jail is downtown and that's what's holding downtown back. Maybe a little bit in terms of, having transient issues when people get out of the jail, they're in downtown. Not having the jail downtown might deal with that. But, I've been to bigger cities. They have big municipal buildings downtown. It's a thing. So the idea that you have the jail and that therefore is stymieing downtown development has never made particularly sense to me.
And for old timers, the original jail and the original courthouse were right on the river. One of those is going to turn into a marina now. Another one is going to turn into a park. So obviously somebody made an attempt to move them a little off the river. We've got Tom on the west side with a comment. Tom?
Good morning. Well, first off, I want to say that if the city would just go to civil citations, the jail would have far less problems with overcrowding than what it's experiencing currently, and we could do that at a lot less cost than building and relocating the jail. And the second point I want to make is there's been talk not of moving it next to the courthouse, but moving it way out to the boundaries of Duval. And if you do that, I believe there are issues with, access to counsel for those that are in jail currently accused of a crime, and also safety and also cost too in transporting the prisoners back and forth from the jail to the courthouse. And in addition to that, there's a massive amount of discomfort you would be subjecting these accused criminals, and that they're always shackled when they're moved. So, like I say, a lot of inconvenience for the prisoners, for the lawyers, and just something to be considered.
Thank you, Tom. Correct. Back that older jail I was talking about actually had a third floor chute going to the old courthouse. You could move the prisoners without having to subject them to vans. Even now, they have to go via a van to the current courthouse. If you built the new courthouse next to the new jail next to the new courthouse, you would have possibly a chute, possibly a walkway, or at least you'd be able to do a 2-block transfer. So that would save money, time, and we are all aware of what's happening at the current jail when it comes to the number of inmates dying in custody.
I think the caller makes a good point, too, that if this committee is too myopically focused on the concrete and the steel and there is not a larger discussion about JSO's practices, not just in the jail, but outside the jail, we are going to have a new jail that has the same problems the current jail has. You know, building a bigger jail, like right now, that just means that that bigger jail is going to be filled. It's the same fallacy of expanding a highway with a new lane to relieve congestion. Like, well, somehow the congestion's the same and the highway is bigger. That has to be a part of this discussion. And like, to the council president's credit, it was taking place too much behind the scenes before this. And it's good that we are vetting the stuff out now. Like, that has to be a part of it.
Well, Nikisha, obviously 11 in-custody deaths at the current jail, the brouhaha regarding the pharmaceutical and medical services, and the immediate, quick, no-bid change to another company that also has problems. Your thoughts about what more has to go into negotiations for a jail?
I think the caller is absolutely correct in talking about civil citations being an alternative to putting people in incarceration for offenses that are probably legal in other states. And I also think that Nate is correct in saying that there needs to be a larger discussion about JSO's practices, what they are arresting people for, how long they're being detained, the bail system, the entire criminal legal system, to be perfectly honest, until we're able to have an honest conversation about incarceration in Jacksonville specifically, but it's a wider conversation that ripples nationwide, and why people are being arrested and why people are being incarcerated. You're going to build a bigger prison. You're going to put people in it because it's expedient and it's in the name of safety, but the police budget is going to continue to balloon. It's going to be a never-ending cycle of incarceration and profit and capitalizing off of human bodies. And so I think instead of looking at moving the jail, moving the police headquarters, why don't we focus on what's all the empty land that's around it first, and maybe developing that? Why don't we focus on improving the jail, getting a new contractor for medical services that doesn't have like a history of abuses and deaths and in custody deaths? Why don't we focus on having mental health services and homeless services for people who are unhoused or who have mental health issues, who are being incarcerated because no one knows what else to do with them, and there's no one else to call besides the police? Those are all things that could solve for what's happening in the jail without actually moving it and contribute to a better community.
I wrote about this week, the sheriff's office has a co-responder program where there are trained clinicians going out. There's only 3 clinicians with the 12 officers. They're hoping to expand that. So that's one way to keep people out of the jail system. But our current and our past sheriff have both said that the civil citations for adults, while it's a good idea for juveniles, they don't like the idea for adults. Stanley, you've got a question from the north side regarding jail mental health.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's not a question. It's a concern because we know for a fact that you have a city council president that's make money from the mental health part of the jail. That's a conflict of interest. I'm appalled by the fact that y'all not addressing the real issue when it comes to the jail. The jail is good for another 10 years. That's not the issue with downtown. And y'all are not addressing the main issues that's going on in this city. And I'm appalled by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Kaz, obviously Ron Salem has recused himself from all votes, right?
Yes.
So he has taken himself out of those votes that deal with the medical system because he is a pharmaceutical supplier for the jail. So
I don't know that he is with NAFCARE. I don't know that he is with
not with NAFCARE, but with the current or soon to be ex.
Yeah.
So he has recused himself and has made that quite plain. So we shall see. We've got another call here. Al, what's your comment? Or AJ, sorry.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
AJ from Mad Dads. Yes, sir.
My question is, if the sheriff office wrote more civil citations, wouldn't that cut into their profit? Because don't they get money for arresting and having people in the jail, either from the state or the federal government? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I can't answer that question, but that is a good point. Anybody else know? No? Okay. I think we should move on to our final topic of this esteemed panel, and this is, last but not least, students in Duval County headed back to school this week as school board officials are planning a half dozen meetings this month to collect public input about what people want in the school district's new superintendent or next superintendent. The biggest story this week is they told us a week ago, 46 bus driver vacancies. That jumped to 100 not showing up on Monday, and apparently there were students and parents waiting. So that was a big issue, along with teacher shortage. Thoughts, everybody?
How do you even fix that?
The state of education in the state of Florida just feels like it's in such a state of chaos from kindergarten through college. Like it's the news is like so overwhelming. It's hard to keep track of it all, honestly.
Teachers may not want to work here that are fresh out of college. Professors who are seeking tenure don't want to work in this state. And the impact is on the students. And we had teacher shortages and bus driver shortages last year and the year before that and the year before that when we had a superintendent. And now everything that has happened over the last couple of years that has led to us now into a superintendent search has only magnified the problems in Florida education as a state, but in Jacksonville specifically, because Jacksonville has been the poster child for the issues when you have national news stories about our empty bookshelves in classrooms and libraries, when you have national news stories about our former superintendent fighting with the mayor over a half-cent sales tax that literally get money to build new schools and refurbish new schools that are falling down on teachers' heads, when you're fighting with the governor over mask mandates in the middle of a global pandemic. Like, nobody wants to deal with that. And I've said it before, people don't have to deal with that. It's not about incentivizing teachers with money. It's not about offering veterans more money to come into the teaching field if they want to. Nobody wants to deal with the bureaucracy and the politics of what it takes to teach in the state of Florida, because that's not even the job. You're supposed to be educating the next generation of school, but now you have to decide whether or not if your lesson about Rosa Parks is compliant if you mention her race and her gender. Like, what are we doing? What are we really doing? You're arguing over whether or not you can teach AP psychology because there's going to be mention of gender and sexuality. Like, these kids don't know what it is already. Like, black kids don't know that they're black already. Like, they don't know that racism exists already. Like, they don't know that back in the day it was really bad and there were things called enslaved people. Like, let's be real. We are naming these fights parental choice, right? But really what we're doing is we are kowtowing to a specific political ideology that finds it politically expedient for career politicians to capitalize off of certain issues that they've called woke or deemed a menace and called indoctrination in order to do what was done at New College down in South Florida in K through 12 education. And so what we're going to end up having is more teacher shortages, less funding for public schools as we see the expansion of voucher programs, and we're going to end up having a state where there are two classes of students. And this is something that Thomas Jefferson said when they were arguing for public education back in the 1800s. There's going to be the class of the labored and the class of the learned. And those who are the learned are going to be those who are affluent, who have the resources, the affordability, or the time to either homeschool their kids or put them into a school system that aligns with their values, or into a private school where they have more control over the curriculum and the population and what goes on and what happens. But the state of public education in Florida is an absolute mess, and I don't see it getting any better. And you want to find a superintendent that's going to want to come in here and do that job? What qualities am I looking for as a parent? I like the qualities of the last superintendent, one who was actually going to stand up for the rights of the children and the rights of the teacher so that they can actually teach and so that the children can learn and not be bogged down by, oh, well, this book talks about him and her and uses they, them pronouns, so we have to take it out of the classroom.
And, of course, here we have AP Psychology. Duval says yes. Duval says no. Duval says yes. And literally over the weekend before school starts, where there's hundreds of students signed up. We've got Jay in Jacksonville with a comment. Jay, good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
My comment is that to be honest with you, I don't find any of this surprising that you have a teacher shortage, that there's a shortage of bus drivers. Over the course of the past 12, 24 months, the AP psychology situation, the African American studies or anything being taught in school, African American, the LGBTQ, all the stances and the way they've poised and positioned themselves on these things, it's not surprising. There's a generation of children that are about to be raised, and ignorance is not bliss. And you can take the education away from a lot of these children. You can take the books away from a lot of these children, but what you can't take away is the hardships that you're going to handicap them with for the rest of their lives. Because there are a lot of people that will tell you, you can do what you want here in the Southeast and Florida and wherever you are from, even in the North or in the West. People do what they do in those areas and those regions, but there's a certain point in time where you got to leave where you're from, and that don't float across the world. That don't float in all the states. You will not be seen as the learned.
Okay, thank you. With 30 seconds left to go before our lightning round, what about the new superintendent? I don't hear a lot of news about that. Is there an actual selection process going on?
Apparently. They're asking for community input,
yeah.
but
it's community input on what? You got to wonder.
it's what qualities do you want in a superintendent? I want someone who's going to be independent of Tallahassee, independent of the school board, and is going to be able to make decisions based on what is best and in the best interest of the students of Duval County. Period.
It doesn't help when the last superintendent was kind of run out for vague reasons. We never really got any sort of clear accounting for why it was she had to go. I mean, it's just that, I mean, even removing all of the kind of larger issues in Florida out of it, this is just not a good political situation to be walking into. And I think that hurts recruitment for quality candidates as well.
I'll tell you, if I was a teacher or a superintendent candidate right now, as Nikisha says, I don't know if I'd want to come into Florida. I certainly wouldn't want to come into a school district that has no superintendent when that last superintendent was asked to leave. So, it is the fun time of our fun day here, and it is time for our lightning round. Mm-hmm. And amazingly, I don't have anything to throw out that hasn't already been talked about. So, guys, I leave it up to you to tell me what's interesting, what's newsworthy that just popped, or what's fun this weekend.
Well, there's some interesting downtown development stuff that we're keeping track of. Obviously, downtown is a perennial issue, but some stuff going through the DIA that will be interesting to see if it works. The other kind of on the edges of downtown is the fight over the gas station in La Villa. It's a Daly's gas station that some people say do not fit the character of what should be in La Villa. So not often a lot of fights over a gas station. This one's kind of a doozy.
That's the one with the bar on top?
It is a bar and gas station, okay, which is honestly the best concept ever or the worst, and I'm not sure which.
But it has a mural, Tim. I mean, murals solve all cultural problems with neighborhood compatibility problems, don't they?
Until they're painted over.
Hey, Jacksonville used to have liquor stores that you could drive up and get a cocktail on the way home, So, Nikisha, any comments?
I'll throw in, Norman Studios grand reopening is this weekend over in Arlington, and I think it's a great piece to see some of Jacksonville's film history before Hollywood took over.
And let's not forget that Mr. Norman himself did quality black cinema, where they were real characters, real human beings. Mm-hmm. And if you've never seen the one surviving Norman Studios film, it's an amazing piece of work with some historical figures in it. Kaz, anything happening newsworthy popping right now?
So now I'm excited to see Norman, but because I'm new to Jacksonville, because I am just learning about this territory, I am looking forward to the further community meetings by Mayor Deegan. I know that makes me just like a government horrible. I enjoy burying myself in agenda items, so this is fun for me. But also because I have seen amazing feedback from the community in the one that I went to, and I see more people getting involved in civic duty. And
well, thanks to our panel, and we've got some fun stuff to buzz about up next.
Reservation Dogs, the acclaimed TV series about a group of teenagers on a native reservation in Oklahoma, is back for season 3. On the next Fresh Air, our interview with the show's co-creator Sterling Harjo, which was recorded last year. And we remember director William Friedkin, best known for his films The French Connection and The Exorcist. Join us.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
For many in Hawaii, the agony of not knowing what happened to their relatives spreads into a second week. In Georgia,
the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
On the Roundup, more on this latest grand jury indictment, as well as the rest of the biggest news this week. Next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And welcome back, gang. Bee Friends Farms Honeybee Festival is returning to the Jacksonville Fairgrounds tomorrow, which is National Honeybee Day. So Michael Leach is founder and owner of Bee Friends Farm, and Paul Sifton is a partner and beekeeper at the farm. So they're both here with the buzz. Guys, we don't realize how important bees are in this world that we live in. So educate me about the fun and the importance of bees, and then we'll talk about how the Bee Friends Farm idea germinated.
All right. Well, good morning. We're holding our first Bee Friends Farm Honeybee Festival, celebrating National Honeybee Day, and it's about the honeybees specifically that support our pollination needs and the good honey that we eat every day. And part of that part of the event is focused mostly on education and bringing the community together to understand that better.
Now, what people don't realize, or maybe they've forgotten, is the bees do the pollination of everything that's important for us to look at, smell, or eat.
Absolutely. Yeah, about 1/3 of all the food we eat is because of the honeybees and the pollination services they provide. But we can't forget the animals in the forest as well, because some of the plants that we put the bees into will help support the native animals as well.
And then obviously the heat, the rain, the lack thereof, the pesticides, the pollution are affecting the bees, which therefore is a cascade effect down to our food sources. Right?
That's correct, yes.
You know, the scariest story I ever did as a TV reporter was holding a live honeycomb as I was doing a stand-up, crawling with bees. I did 2 takes, and I told the photographer, that's it, I'm done.
That's enough.
Beekeeper, take this away.
Yeah.
And I had no gloves on. Silly things we would do as reporters. Guys, you have a brick and mortar shop in Murray Hill. I'm looking at this lovely bottle of black mangrove honey, which I will donate to the cause later. What do you sell at the shop? I mean, I'm looking at the obvious, honey.
So one of our specialties is we, as a beekeeper, we produce varietal raw honeys from around Florida. The one black mangrove is the only saltwater plant that we produce honey from. But we also have about 5 other major varietals, such as Tupelo, gallberry, our local wildflower, of course, orange blossom, just to name a few of them.
So what about this weekend's festival? What are we looking at? Where is it? Give us some information.
So the event's going to be at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds Saturday, August 19th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We'd like to have everybody out. The event will include Be a Kid Zone, where we'll have 3 of the Northeast Florida beekeeping associations volunteering some time to have hands-on activities, as well as educate people about bees and equipment, and there'll even be a fun area for kids to put on bee suits and take pictures, like a photo area. You'll be able to roll beeswax candles, build beehives. Just part of the activities, there's also 5 guest speakers that will be bringing, have 5 different presentations throughout the day. And we'll have 60 plus great vendors, local vendors. They'll have all their goods, as well as food trucks. And Volstead will be on site as well, mixing drinks.
The educational part will cover everything from beekeeping to baking, and there'll be many different professionals that'll be up there for either the new bee keepers or for even the experienced beekeepers. There'll be a good educational background in there.
You know, for the 40 years I've been in Jacksonville and also up in New England as a reporter, I remember you'd pass a house and there'd be these white boxes in the backyard. And I'd wonder what they were. And then I found out that those were locals with their own bees, with their own honey.
Bees, yes.
Is that still a thing?
It's huge. It's actually in Florida, starting about 2009, 2010, we had a huge increase in backyard beekeepers. The state tries to keep track of them, and we had about 1,500 beekeepers across the state, mostly made up of backyard beekeepers, and now we're well over 4,000 local beekeepers to Florida, and Northeast Florida is a huge part of that 4,000 people.
Now, you talk about drinks, but a good friend of mine, Ed Stanzel, makes mead. And I remember drinking the orange blossom honey, and I could taste the citrus. I could taste the blossom in it. So that's something people don't think about. There is a beverage that has been out there, adult beverage that's been out there for centuries, made from honey. Anybody want to just briefly talk about that with about a minute and a half left to go?
So that's a great point. Volstead will be making some honey syrups that will be mixed in some of their drinks, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, for people to try. And honey has been used in cooking, baking, and other medicinal purposes for eons. So it'll be a good experience if you come out and try some of those products as well to see how you can use them at home.
Well, Burlock and Barrel, which is a Brooklyn area distillery, actually makes a whiskey with raw honey. And the honey sits at the bottom of the bottle. You have to shake the bottle up every time you take a drink. And it's an amazing adult beverage under supervision. But what else do we do with honey? I mean, I know I used to put it on toast before I really couldn't.
Yeah, the most obvious is the toast. But we find a lot of the people are using it for their coffees, teas, as well as we're starting to see a trend of people using it in their day-to-day baking and cooking around the home. And one of our guest speakers will be speaking, Happy Bake Day will be speaking specifically about using honey in recipes.
What do you do with meat? I mean, obviously ham gets a glaze, but what else can you do with it?
With meat?
With meat. I mean, just give me some ideas here. Make me hungry.
Oh, so for cooking with honey? So we at home, we'll use a skillet with some fish, and we'll put some honey in the skillet at the end just to help glaze and caramelize the fish. You could do that with pork or chicken as well. We do it on the grill. We also have infused honey, such as our daddle pepper infused honey, that will help spice up a meal.
All right. Don't forget, guys, Jacksonville Fairgrounds tomorrow, National Honeybee Day, and the Bee Friends Farms Honey Bee Festival. Now, if you have any questions or comments about First Coast Connect, send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I'm Dan Scanlon, and you're listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. That is our program. Thanks to all our guests and callers. Executive producer is David Luckin. Senior producer, Heather the Great Schatz. Our director, the Spielberg of Operations, Michelle Coram. And our associate producer, Stacy the Brain Bennett. We'll be back Monday, but if you missed anything, listen to the rebroadcast at 8 tonight, or find today's show at WJCT.org or on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, keep your heart open for Duval and each other, and have a great weekend.